I am here with Jason DeRose, founder and lead developer of Novacut, and wanted to take some time today to talk about an online cloud-based video editing tool, which has to date not been something that's been that easy to accomplish, and I would love to see more, hear more, and find out exactly where this sort of fits into the cloud ecosystems that we're building. But I'm going to turn it over to Jason and really let him talk about, one, himself and the company, and two, where he sees this heading, particularly with educational applications, where more and more we've got to find some way to deal with students bringing their own device and being sort of platform independent. So off you go.
So I guess the first thing I should clarify a little bit is we like to describe it as cloud-enabled rather than cloud-based. So for our main target is professional storytelling. So people making TV series, web series, movies, documentaries, and one of the issues there is although the cloud's very attractive in terms of the compute resources you can throw at something. The problem is it just takes so long to upload, professional footage to the cloud that you have to be able to work locally, you have to be able to work offline. But the way we built things is we do our user interface with WebKit, so it's an HTML5 UI, and when it runs on a single machine, the server components just run locally.
Nice.
But once you have the footage, either the original footage or proxy files in the cloud, then it's easy to take basically that same user experience and make it available through any modern browser. So it could be a tablet, it could be a phone. One thing that's still to be seen is how practical this ends up being. Like one scenario that's important for us is people, while they're on set, want to be able to use a tablet as basically a fancy remote control.
Right.
So they'd be talking to a local Novacut server, and so they'd be like, flipping through the latest takes, looking for continuity issues, technical problems that might mean they should do additional takes, and there, you should be able to basically do full editing with a good user experience because you have fast, low latency. The goal is to make it as useful as possible across the web, but there's also just a lot of variables there that we don't have control over, and so it's going to be seen how much people. I'm not sure you'd sit down and edit for 8 hours that way, for example.
Right. Now, I guess it kind of seems, though, that, in a professional setting, definitely this is a useful supplement. But in a less formal setting, it seems as though, like you said, some of this has to shake out and bandwidth has to become ubiquitous and we need, lots of things to work. But in a less formal setting, do you think this could be the tool? The only tool that say, a student or teachers might use for this sort of digital storytelling kind of thing?
I think definitely. And I think especially, I'm actually really glad you wanted to talk about kind of the educational tie-in because one of my big things is I'm all about people doing stuff that's real as soon as possible.
Right.
And so one of the interesting things that we're doing is if an artist chooses to, they can basically make their edit open source.
Nice.
And one of the things we're excited about is, I'm a college dropout. I went to school for a while as a math major, then dropped out, and became a very competent programmer by just studying what was out there. And so I think the ability to look at here's a real live movie, and just to be able to look at their edit and how they organize stuff and how they start to understand the thought process there, I think is going to be huge in terms of teaching kids the thought process of storytelling.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. This is tell me about a kind of a typical workflow. And I know my video stopped here, so don't worry about that. We'll just we'll edit that out. We can go to full screen video for you for your part. So tell me about a typical workflow, though, and how you might envision maybe a collaborative project or some sort of project where students might be able to authentically go ahead and produce some real work. How would that work within Novacut?
And do you mean kind of in an educational setting, or in kind of...
Sure, or even an independent setting. I actually just wrote a blog last night on the WizIQ blog about, what if my kids don't go to college? Where that was always sort of this holy grail. And honestly, my oldest son just founded a community theater group, and his grades totally suffered as a result of it this semester. But you know what? He learned more from that process and did probably a much cooler thing for this economically depressed community where we live, and he had standing room only in an unused town hall, doing something very cool. As a parent, I should be just horrified at the grades, but really, I was so thrilled that he did this. It's totally okay, and so whether it's in a formal educational setting or a less formal educational setting, how might, if you wanted to produce a project, wanted to go ahead and bring some of this stuff to bear and get something out there for people to see and do and experience, how would it work?
So one thing I always like to emphasize is that professional storytelling is highly collaborative always. That's not a new thing we're doing. The new thing we're doing is enabling the different people required to make that happen to work in remote locations. So a lot of the idea behind this was inspired by the way free software works in distributed teams, and I think that's been a huge strategic advantage for companies like Red Hat and Canonical, and so I wanted to bring that kind of location.
Right.
So, and then another thing especially like in the kind of Hollywood production pipeline, it's a lot of really distinct steps done by different people. So, for example, an editor in the Hollywood sense just does video cutting. They don't do color correction. They don't do any special effects. They don't do like detailed audio work. It's just cutting. And so, in that case, you could have people just doing these different jobs, and that's an easy way to divide it up. Another important scenario is basically being able to look at the same thing and kind of conversationally talk about it. Like, well, okay, let's see, what if we, flip the order of these two scenes, or pull this one out, or try this variation, and being able to, say you're on Skype or Google Plus and talking to someone, but then be in the application or on the web UI and seeing exactly what they're talking about. And this is something that, it turns out a lot of people are already trying to do with like screen sharing, but it's just, it doesn't deliver smooth enough of a playback experience to really get a feel for what's going on.
Gotcha. So no, that's perfect. So, I mean, it does then bring a much more collaborative element to the whole process, and I think that, there is obviously a movement within independent filmmaking, and as well as in education, there doesn't need to be that extraordinarily formal process. We have people contributing, and content creation is the sort of the ultimate expression of what they may have learned. So this is really critical to be able to enable that and strip away some of the nonsense. It doesn't have to be there in a lot of settings. So where does Novacut sort of stand right now? I mean, I know it's early in the process. Where does it stand in terms of being able to get people access to this?
So right now, you can use it on Ubuntu, the native application. We're still doing work on kind of bringing up our initial cloud infrastructure so you can use it through the web. But I always hate trying to give timelines because it's so hard to see that.
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, we're probably at least 2 or 3 months out before any of the cloud stuff's able to be played with.
Right.
But yeah, right now you can install it on Ubuntu, and it's it's quite usable as long as you're using video from Canon DSLR. Other cameras, we don't know because that's not what we're testing right now.
Right.
And I think the first thing we started with was what we call our storyboard view, and that was kind of one of the riskiest, most daring kind of UI experiments we undertook, and it's turned out very well. Like, we've gotten consistent positive feedback from professional users, and most people seem pretty excited about it, and so that's something that I encourage people to try and check out and see what you think about it.
Yeah,
but
definitely. That's great. Yeah, I'm in Windows now because the recruiting software I use is that, but I normally boot into Ubuntu, and so on. That'll be my next install this afternoon. So that's great. I'll have to check that out and give it a more thorough test drive. But this is incredibly cool. I mean, I think we're sort of on an inflection point to just enable content creation that is it's simple and it's straightforward, and people work together to do it, and we have a better way. The days of Windows Movie Maker, I think, maybe somewhat over, and I love Adobe Premiere, and I love that there's high-end software that can do awesome things. We don't all need to do awesome things. We need to create, and so if we can enable that in a great way, then wonderful. Well, congratulations on getting this fired up, and please let us know when some of the cloud pieces are coming together, because I'd love to get this out there for our readers and viewers to see in more detail.
Of course, thank you.
Awesome, you bet. Have a good weekend.